About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I had been driving about 45 minutes, and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired, out of nowhere? Well yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes, to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. The roads weren't empty, I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22, and then fell asleep. Sometime later I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rear view mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer, you know, the one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate? Screw that, I thought to myself, so I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a car, parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door open. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rear view mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, "Hey! Hey you! Get out of your car! Now!" I noped out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. Moral of the story? Don't sleep on the side of a deserted road. I should have read the reviews. My girlfriend moved out 3 weeks ago. My cat, Ruck, was really close to her, and now that she's gone, I can tell he's a bit lonely. Especially when I'm at work. I came home a few times to my curtains ripped up, or all the toilet paper in shreds. The last straw was when I came home after working late to find he had clawed a hole the size of a dinner plate into the side of the sofa. I decided I had to do something. I tried different toys, even catnip, but nothing worked. One night while browsing Amazon, I saw a pet camera. It's a tiny camera that records your pet on a live feed so you can monitor their behavior while you're away. It even has an audio function so you can talk to them. Sounded silly, but hey, I love my furry dude, so I bought it. I got overnight shipping and installed it immediately. I decided to set it up in my bedroom, as that was where Ruck dwelled most. My first day at work I think I checked that camera 30 times. When I spoke into the microphone, Ruck seemed to be happier, and I noticed there was no destruction around the house either. By day 4 I figured I'd solved the problem with Ruck. That leads me to right now. About 30 minutes ago I climbed in bed with Ruck, ready to close my eyes, when my phone buzzed. A notification from the pet cam. I almost ignored it, sure I'd just triggered the thing. But I opened it anyway. What I saw made my grip tighten on the phone. Instead of a video of myself in bed, I saw a man, tall, gangly, with pale skin, and large eyes. He was moving into my room with exaggerated steps, like a sneaking cartoon character. He got right up to the lens, so close I could almost smell his rotten breath, and he smiled. I immediately paused the video, terrified. I looked at the spot where the man should have been standing, but there was no one there. I went onto Amazon and found the pet cam, and read the reviews, hoping for some weird glitch. It had to be a joke, right? The first dozen reviews were pretty standard, but it was the last that caused me to bolt upright. The customer complained that the camera was on a time delay, sometimes as much as 15 minutes. I went back to the video and pressed play with shaky fingers. I watched in horror as the man slithered under my bed, giving the camera a wink before disappearing in the darkness. Then I saw myself enter the room and climb in bed before the video ended. Now I'm sitting in my bed, knowing he's under it. I could call the police, but I doubt I'd have time. So please, do yourselves a favor and read the reviews. I keep my son inside a chest. Each morning when I wake up, I open the chest where I keep my son. I stroke his small skull and murmur, "Good morning," although I know he can no longer hear me. I hope he doesn't think I've abandoned him. I hope he knows I never will. When my son died of a fever, I refused to let him go. He was only a baby, and all that I had left. So I turned to the stories my own mother had told me, the rituals and legends I'd learned in childhood. The rules of bringing someone back from the underworld seemed so easy. I scoffed at the stories of those who failed, sure that my willpower would be stronger than theirs. I forced my way through to the fields of night, and I found my son's faint, pale soul. I guided it all the way back to his body, never looking back once. When I saw my son open his eyes again and smile at me, I thought I had made the right choice. He laughed, he ran, he played just as he had before. I even believed I could pretend nothing had happened. Then a few days later, I saw the rot creeping up his skin. At that moment, I realized my mistake. I hadn't restored my son to life. I had only brought his soul back to his corpse. I tried to comfort him as his body swelled and decayed. He wailed day and night in fear as his flesh fell from his bones. Only when his throat rotted away did he stop screaming. I attempted to return to the underworld, to return my son's soul, but the way would not open to me again. I cheated death, and my punishment was to keep what I stole. When his ligaments finally broke down, I gathered his bones and placed them in the antique chest I inherited from my mother. Only the best would do for my son. Sometimes my son's bones lie still inside the chest for hours, even days, and I dare to hope that his soul found its way back to where it belongs. But sooner or later, his bones always begin to rattle again, and I know he's still alive. Once, all I wanted was to have my son here with me. But now, I would give anything for him to die. This is not supernatural creepy, but is one of the more disturbing and surreal experiences of my life. One early morning a few short years ago, I am walking to my bus stop and eating a banana. It is dark, misty, around 5 a.m., and I am internally debating something trivial, like if I want my daily Starbucks before or after the commute. As I approach the dimly lit corner on my street, a tall man in a black mask steps out of the dark alleyway to my left. Sleepy and disoriented, I barely acknowledge him. When he shouts, "Put down your FNG purse," and points his gun to my head, things start to click. The man says, "Put down your bags," and I tell him, okay, I'm putting them down over here." He orders me to walk over to him, toward the alley, and get down on the ground, and I agree, I'm coming, okay. My heart is beating 1,000,000 miles a minute and my hands still smell sticky with banana. I know I need to get away. I don't know why, but my mouth won't stop working. Look, see, I'm on the ground. My stuff is over there. Please just take my stuff, but he doesn't like it. Shut up, okay? He gets on top of me and puts the gun to my head. At this point, I should mention the fact that I'm on my way to coach a high school practice and I'm dressed like a dude. Huge baggy pants, hat, jacket. If not for my telltale voice, I'd look like a prepubescent 90s rap star. Anyway, as the guy gets on top of me, gun to my head, he looks at me and pauses. I can't tell you why I know this, but I swear that at this moment, it clicks for him that I'm a woman. He gets off of me, stands up, and points to the dark alley. Come with me. My stomach hurts. I remember that there have been a recent rash of sexual assaults in my neighborhood, during the daytime no less. When the man points down that dirty alleyway, my internal voice speaks up. Says voice number 1, "There was no way in hell you are going to go down there without a fight." "But he has a gun, you dipshit," replies voice number 2. "Follow me," the real voice, his voice, hollers. So I do what I do best, I talk. "I'm coming, I'm following you." I call. And the man makes a crucial mistake, he believes me. I take 1, 2 tiny steps backwards, toward the sidewalk. And he turns his body, and his gun, toward the alley. This is my moment. I take a deep breath, tuck my head down in case he starts shooting, and start sprinting away. I hear a voice screaming in a high-pitched wail before I realize that it's mine. After running 6 or 7 blocks, I head back to my apartment, hoping he's not there to see where I lived. The police check out the alleyway an hour later, but the potential attacker is long gone. The only evidence of the encounter is my banana peel browning in the alleyway and the adrenaline rush that I couldn't shake for days. I would be lying if I said that if that experience doesn't bother me still. But I'm so fortunate to mainly be haunted by the what-ifs and not the what-dids. TLDR, almost abducted by 5 guys in a super shady part of town really late one night, saved by hero comedian. Back in 2004 I was a young/dumb 17-year-old country girl in the city for the first time for college. One night I decided I could totally safely walk back to my dorm at around 1:30 in the morning despite not really knowing where I was. Of course I instantly end up wandering around a terrible part of the city. Most of the streetlights are busted out, trash everywhere, loud arguments from inside the dilapidated as fuck row houses. In short, I wouldn't even want to be here in the middle of the day. A car drives up behind me and slows down, so they're keeping pace with me for nearly an entire block. I look over and there are 5 unsavory-looking men inside. By this point, I was approaching an intersection, and they pull up, make a left, and stop in the street directly in my path. Motherfuck. I completely panic at this point and just stand there, right in front of them. My mind went completely blank. I've never been that scared in my life. It didn't even make sense to try to run because they would have caught me without question. I'm not really sure how long I stood there, but suddenly the porch light in the house just past the car came on, dude casually strolls outside carrying a bag of trash, and car peels away. I completely break down crying and shaking. Dude spots me and listens to my probably incoherent story, takes me inside and gives me a soda, then he and his roommate walk me back to my dorm. They were both lovely and invited me to check out their stand-up sometime, but unfortunately I was too young to get into a bar. I never saw them again, don't even remember their names, but feel pretty confident that if that guy hadn't decided to take his trash out at 1 a.m. on a Saturday my life would have taken a really shitty turn that night. When I was young, I'd say 8-11-ish, my sister whom is 7 years older would babysit me when my parents were out. At the time, she smoked a lot and my parents made her smoke outside of course. So, I'd follow her outside into the carport, which faced the street, and play around, annoy her and such. One day my sister notices a car at the end of the driveway, just sitting in the road. It's a white SUV, I believe a mid-90s Bravado, not sure, with a bike rack on top. It has the most tinted windows I have ever seen, you could not see inside from the side. It sat there until she went inside, then would drive to the end of the road and sit at the church parking lot and wait. Wait until she'd come out again for another smoke. And it would repeat this. Odd, but my sister is a brave lady and just kind of ignored it. That is, until the next day while my parents were out again and it showed up again. It would sit at the end of the driveway. And just watch. I don't know what the driver was doing. But he was watching my sister. If I didn't go out, I'd watch from the front window and it would just sit there and watch my sister. She told my father, who was a sheriff deputy at the time, and he called the cops, made a complaint. They showed up, looked around, but the SUV was nowhere to be seen. Months went by, and nothing. Then one day, a good 9 months after this had all started and 4-ish since the last sighting, it was back. It became a regular occurrence. Another day, my sister was outside doing her nasty habit, and sure enough here it comes. This time we were alone as usual, and she decides she's had enough. She tells me to stay in the carport, and she's going to go confront them. She starts walking toward the SUV. And halfway down the driveway she would later remark to us, "I felt utter terror, like I knew if I went any further, I was dead. I was paralyzed by pure fear." She turned around and went inside. Finally, the family car was in the shop for some kind of issue, so we were all stuck home for a night and had to get delivery, etc. While my parents are home, my sister goes outside to smoke. I go outside with her, and eventually the SUV shows up. She tells me to run inside and tell my father, and I do. My dad promptly gets his gun and starts briskly walking down the driveway with it in hand, in the direction of the SUV, but not leveled towards it. The SUV floored it, down the road and peeled out onto the nearby large highway. My dad, being a cop, noted the year and model and distinguishing features. The scariest thing? The license plate had been covered in duct tape. My mother-in-law was never saw it again, and my sister just kind of shrugs it off. She and my wife were really close, and sadly, she passed away when our son was about 4 months old. Flash forward a few years. We live in an old 1930s-era craftsman house in Pasadena, California. Our son is about 3 at the time. I was giving him a bath one night and he starts looking over my shoulder, not at random stuff, but at something. A moment passes and he asks me why Grandma calls Mommy a funny name. Long pause. I asked him what he meant, thinking he was talking about my mom. He then says, "Why does Grandma call Mommy, my mother-in-law's nickname for my wife?" I was really set back by this. My wife and I never used the nickname, it was just what her mom called her since she was a baby. I asked him where he heard that. His reply: "The farmer told me." I asked him who the farmer was and he replied, "His friend." I tell my wife this story later and she's of course reduced to tears over the whole nickname thing. We both know there is no way for him to know this and we just kinda marvel at it. Flash forward to the next weekend and my son is playing in his room. My wife is at work, retail, and I'm home. I worked Monday to Friday. I hear him start talking like he's having a conversation. He's saying things like, "Yes, no, I don't know that," then some laughing. I go into his room and ask him what he's doing and he says playing. I ask with who. He says the farmer. At this point I'm already thinking about the FNG Exorcist movie and Captain Howdy. It's a little unsettling. I ask him where the farmer is. He says he left when I came in. So my wife gets home and I tell her this and now she's just as weirded out as I am. We have no idea what to do and figure if it happens again we'll do something. A few days later in the middle of the night we both overhear our son saying the following: "Grandma says you and I can't be friends anymore." Wife and I go check on him, both of us a little freaked. He's just sitting up in bed. I ask if he's okay and he says yeah. Grandma says I can't play with the farmer anymore. He never once mentioned the farmer again. Not ever. He's 13 now and doesn't remember any of it. We do though. I have some stories that scare the heck out of me, but I'm not sure how you all will react because it's not your messed up brain. Shortly after graduating from high school I woke up one morning and found my father dead in our living room. I tried giving CPR but he was already dead by the time I came out. I suffered PTSD from this event and would regularly have nightmares where I would be walking to the living room and I would realize what I was about to see and I would start screaming before I got there, and then I would wake up screaming. This lasted about a year where I was not a functioning human being. I would stay awake for days to not experience the dream over again. Then one day I had a mental break in the middle of the day. According to my girlfriend, who is now my wife, said I tensed up like I was having a seizure for about an hour straight. In my mind I had to keep living out that morning over and over, but I would stop myself before I went into the living room with a primal scream, which my wife said I would do in real life as well, until I finally let myself go into the living room and see my father's dead body. After I came out of it, I did not have the nightmares anymore. Flash forward to 2005, I joined the army and am in Iraq. I was leading a convoy and we had intel that terrorists were sending children out in front of convoys to get them to stop and ambush them. As I'm driving, a kid runs out about 300 meters in front of my vehicle and I froze. We had orders to run over anyone in our way and I was dreading having to make this decision. My truck chief is screaming at me to floor it, so I do, and the kid dodges out of the way at the last second. When we get to the next fob, I go to get some sleep but am disturbed about the moral choices I had made that day. As I fall asleep, I have a nightmare that I am driving again and the kid jumps out in front of me. This time I run him over but then stop, feeling the horror of what I did. I go to check the body and as I go around to the back of the truck I get that same dread I used to. Somehow in my brain I remember my old nightmares and assure myself it's not the same. As I get around the truck I see my father's dead body and I go straight into my primal screaming again, only to wake up screaming and running. I mean, I am at a full sprint as I wake up and in a part of the fob I don't recognize. I thankfully haven't suffered from these nightmares anymore, but I'm in constant fear of my own screwed up mind. About 5 years ago, my mom started dating a guy she met on a dating site. That part is fine. I had recently started dating the woman who would later become my wife and we had met online. I'll just refer to her as my wife for this story. Anyway, my wife and I never really liked this guy. We didn't think he was mean or anything like that, just a little creepy. He was quiet, he kept his eyes closed a lot, and occasionally said odd things like offering my wife a chocolate and then popping one in his mouth, closing his eyes, and moaning as he let it melt in his mouth. One time my wife and I were visiting my mom but she got called into work, so we waited at her house. Her boyfriend was over but he spent the entire several hours just hanging out in her bedroom with the door closed. Just before Christmas, my mom and this guy started having some difficulties. My wife and I were visiting her for the holidays and she dropped all of her problems on us and we listened carefully and told her our opinions and suggested that she would be better off without him. She already had her mind made up, though, and decided to break up with him on Christmas Eve. We spent the night at my mom's and got up early on Christmas morning to visit my dad at his house. We didn't plan to spend the night at my dad's, but we got snowed in, which was actually a nice Christmas surprise. The next day we left as soon as we could get through the snow and my wife suggested that we stop by my mom's house on the way so that we could see if she was okay. My wife just had a really bad feeling about my mom's now ex-boyfriend. My mom's car was in the driveway, but that doesn't mean much because she lives close enough to work that she often walks and it hadn't snowed in her town. She also never locks her door, which drives me crazy, so we let ourselves in. That's when we see blood oozing out of the refrigerator's water dispenser. It had filled up the spill container and was leaking onto the floor and had made a puddle. My wife screamed and I freaked out. I fully expected to see my mom's head in the freezer. I nervously opened the freezer to find a bag of frozen cherries that had been opened, crammed into the freezer so that it fell onto the ice dispenser, and melted. Alrighty. This is the late 80s/early 90s, I was around 6 to 7 years old. I am at home with my sister who is 14 to 15 at the time. We grew up in a small Texas town, everyone knows everybody. We are home alone this particular night, and my folks let my sister babysit me frequently. We always got along due to our age gap. Anyway, it is about 8 p.m. in the winter, deserts get pretty damn cold, so it is dark and we are in the common room since that is where the TV was. Watching 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or Hard Copy or some shit, those 1-hour news pieces on CBS that chronicle large crimes in depth, trafficking, murders, kidnappings and the like. Basically a gritty Lifetime special. This one was a typical story. Guy next door that was quiet went on a rampage in his next door neighbor's house, mutilating them and kidnapping their young daughter. Well, the thing about our house common room is the door leading to the backyard was a large glass door on a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows. Nothing but blackness beyond it unless you have the back light on. We did not. The front door is on the other side of the room with a small entryway. This is a solid door, so you cannot see what is beyond it, with a glass storm door on the outside of it. About 45 minutes into the show, they are talking about the ongoing manhunt for this crazy guy, and bam bam bam, front door bangs like crazy. We jump the fuck up and scream like banshees. Dead silence now. The only lights on in the house are the kitchen down the hall from the common room we were in and the light from the TV. We start thinking something on the porch, we had some planters and a rocking chair out there, had simply blown against the door. This was West Texas, crazy strong winds out that way. Well, a minute or two of silence and us holding each other post-adrenaline overdose passes. Just when we are about to declare everything is safe, we hear the storm door on the outside of our front door close. Fuck. Someone had to have opened that door to be able to bang on the front door like that. Shit. We are both frozen in the middle of the room on the floor where we had been watching TV. My sister crawls over to the TV and turns it off. It was an old TV, so you had to turn that metal dial to switch it off, which it does with a mildly loud thunk. Now it is just us in a room dimly lit by the kitchen light down the hall. I do not remember how much time passed with my frozen and my sister still crouched by the now off TV, but we kept making eye contact, then looking at the front door. I remember this part vividly. I am on my knees sitting on my feet and I turn around to look at the back wall of windows and glass door. We hear and I see the back door knob turn. It was locked on the knob but not deadbolt. It rattles slightly as if someone is gently trying the handle. Neither of us make a sound, just held breath. Then bam 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 loud as all hell, someone is trying to force the door open, just jerking it back and forth. The whole wall of windows is vibrating violently and I can see with each jerk of the door how my slight reflection gets fuzzy, then clear, then fuzzy. My sister flips her shit and screams bloody murder. I am still frozen on the floor. She gets up and basically drags me into her bedroom, slams the door, throws her mattress and anything she can in front of her door. Thankfully she had remembered the phone, one of those ungodly heavy beige plastic long metal antenna portable phones. We still had to direct dial the sheriff there and in her panic didn't remember the number. She just hit redial on the phone. It was one of her friends and she tells them in broken gasps that someone is trying to get into our house and needs to get there right fucking now. The profanity sticks out here more than anything else. Who knows, young brain. I am curled up on the floor and cannot stop shaking. We don't hear anything else until we see the headlights of my sister's friend and her parents driving up to the house. We never did find out who was at the door or why. There were no signs of anything happening but a couple of scuff marks on the bottom of the back door that we could not remember if they were there beforehand or not. Nothing like that has happened to me or her since, but for damn sure we never forget to lock a door after that. A terrifying, but true story I experienced when I was 12. I moved to my dad's when I was 10 and didn't know anyone in the area, except for the family my dad was friends with. Single mom with 3 kids. Luckily there was a girl a couple years older than me, 12 at the time I met her, and we got to know each other a little over a couple years. We weren't close, but ended up having the same friends. One night my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work. Which is where this gets terrifying and sad. Her mother has been helping this one lady, through her work, and got to know her fairly well. She found out her sister was in a mental institution and was let out recently. The night Rob is hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door. My friend thought it was just their mom. She knocks a certain way when coming in, and answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there and he took off through the window to his house down the road. He never thought twice about it. Wasn't her mom. It was the sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to her sister where her family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where is don't know details, and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbors to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas. Decapitated her and left her body, naked in a bathtub. Hit her head. They had to look through the presents and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. True story time. I was about 4 or 5 years old and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room and I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer and my mom had a window open her room, which was directly behind the bed, above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the door frame of my mom's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3/4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the door frame and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the first floor and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed and we were able to start screaming for help and someone called 911. The police came but didn't see any signs of forced entry. Only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. The strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night, with the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. Posted this elsewhere, but here it goes, not me but my sister. So growing up my sister had an imaginary friend. She said she was an older lady and she was nice and her name was EE. She talked to her and played with her, all that jazz, until she was probably 4 or so and then it stopped. Fast forward to when my sister was about 10. My mom isn't home, she got a call to go to the nursing home for GPA, so she bolts with pops. My sister and I shared a room at the time and she was in there doing whatever and I was on the other end of the house. All of a sudden I hear the radio in our room click on, turn all the way up, turn all the way down, and go off. This happened like 3 times, so I go in there to be all like WTF kid, knock it off, and she is sitting in our room just white as a ghost. I go over to the radio to unplug it, no plug. No batteries, only radio in the house. I look at her and she goes, it was EE, I saw her, it was EE. So I call mom, freaking out, and mom is so upset. Apparently grandpa had just passed away. Okay, weird, I drop incident, whatever. A few days later at the funeral a relative comes up to us and gives us a pic she found. My sister goes, hey, it is EE. It was a pictures of my grandparents when they got married. My grandmother died before I was even thought of, when my mom was 11. We live in the home my mom grew up in. We have no pictures of her at all, as my step-grandmother got rid of them all when she moved into the house a few years after mom's death. Every time I stay at my grandma's house, I hear someone walking upstairs. It starts at one side of the room, casually walks to the other and stops. This will happen maybe twice a night. I didn't start hearing it until I was about 14, when my grandparents made me start sleeping in a different room on the first floor because they starting sleeping in separate bedrooms. Blah blah blah, regardless both of their rooms are also on the first floor. For a little backstory, I have always been afraid of the upstairs at their house. I don't know why, but it's always freaked me out, and I refuse to ever go up there alone. I'm 23 now, still won't go up alone. There's one room specifically, though. It's a long, narrow bedroom. When you open the door, there are closets on your left and right, a bed placed roughly in the middle of the room, and a window on the far side opposite the door. I was told growing up by my grandparents that the sons of the previous owner claimed to see a gorilla come out of the closet at night, dance around the room, and go back into the closet. I thought nothing of this story until I had to start sleeping in the other room. The room located directly below the scary room upstairs. So, we all go to bed. All the lights in the house are off and I'm still awake, lying on the bed. Then I heard it. Thump. 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 Starting at one end of the room upstairs. It got closer to me, passed right above me, and continued to the end of the room, where it stopped. I'm wide awake, terrified out of my mind. It was no question to me that I had heard footsteps. I knew that slow, casual pace. I was freaked out and went to my grandpa's room. I told him what I heard. He told me that the house is old and it creaks. But he turned the dining room light on for me, so I felt a little safer. I tried going back to sleep. Then it started again, this time from where it ended the first time, by the window upstairs. It walks over me again and stops when it reached the door. I thought it was over until 5 seconds later when I heard it coming down the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, silence as it reached the landing. Then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And silence again as it reached the first floor. I was frozen in shock. Whatever it was on my floor of the house, and sadly unaffected by the dining room light. I was staring at the doorway to my room, the dining room light was shining in, and my vision began to distort. I felt dizzy with fear, so I pulled the blankets over my head and suddenly heard a scratching sound from inside my room. I knew exactly where it was coming from, too, my grandpa's gun case. It was a very obvious sound, scratching on the wood. Long scratches down the front of the gun case door. I could even hear the door ever so slightly tapping against the frame as each scratch began. I tried to scream and I couldn't. I took a second to take a deep breath and let out a loud scream. In seconds my grandpa had made it to my room and I was relieved. Needless to say, he still didn't believe me. So I did what any normal person would do. I draped a sheet over the side of the bed and slept underneath it. I wrapped myself tight in a comforter, put on headphones, and turned my back to the door. There could be a party of ghosts in my room and I wouldn't even know. The next morning, my grandpa told my grandma about what happened the night before. She said, "Oh, that's silly. You know, your cousin woke me up the last time she stayed here. She came in my room saying, 'I hear footsteps.' I slept under the bed for the rest of my week's stay with them. I've stayed there countless times since that happened, and I hear the footsteps every time. I sleep on top of the bed now, but keep my back to the door and sleep with headphones on. I haven't heard it come down the stairs since that first night, but if it does, I don't want to know." When I was in high school, I had a really good friend who lived next door to a house that was always up for sale. People would move out in the middle of the night without a word, and it hadn't had the same owner for more than 6 months straight for a couple of years. One night we were really bored and he suggested we go explore the house next door since it had sat empty for a while. We go around back and there's a dog door that he can crawl through, and he unlocks the door and lets me in. The house itself is really unremarkable. It looked like it was built in maybe the 1950s and was a craftsman-style house in an older, nicer part of town. My friend's house was similarly built. The kitchen had a really nice built-in breakfast table set against a picture window. The house's electricity was off but you could see the street light through the window. My friend and I sit down, on the floor, across from this table, and are just hanging out, talking. Why? Who knows? All of a sudden my friend screams and in that instant, my vision goes black. But it wasn't that I just couldn't see, my body was engulfed in this sickly coldness from head to toe. I start screaming and I feel my friend's hand grabbing mine and pulling me in some direction forcefully. My vision slowly comes back and I start to warm up when I realize that we're outside under the streetlight. It was December and should have been much warmer inside of that house. Finally I look at my friend and he looks scared. I'm really confused and kind of panicked myself and finally ask him what happened. He says that as I was talking, a black thing. This figure that was all black and only had the vague shape of a girl crawled out from under the table and sat on top of me. Apparently I started groping around with my eyes wide open, like I couldn't see, and he was so freaked out he pulled me out of the house. We're still friends and we bring it up every now and then, but the story itself never changes and it still sends chills down my spine. To this day, I've never felt such blackness or coldness in my life. It was palpable, almost sticky. For a couple of days afterward, I couldn't shake this unsettling feeling, and I could never walk past that house again. Ugh. I'm scared to get out of bed now,